In the far reaches of the galaxy, among the stars that twinkled like distant diamonds, existed a race of beings known as the Tylar. They weren't like humans, nor did they even understand humans at first. The Xylar were cold, logical creatures. Their world was built on order, reason, and precision. Every action they took, every decision they made, was calculated down to the smallest detail. They didn't believe in what humans called emotion or bonding. Those things were, to them, weaknesses, distractions from what really mattered: efficiency. Their leader, Kalar, was one of the most brilliant minds of their species. As the head of their intergalactic research team, Kalar had seen and studied countless life forms, from the tiniest microbes to towering spacefaring civilizations. However, when it came to humans, Kalar was dismissive. They were nothing but chaotic, emotional beings, driven by impulses that often led to destruction or unnecessary conflicts. Kalar had always thought that humanity's emotional nature was a flaw. It had no place in a universe that ran on the predictable laws of science. As Kalar prepared for an important meeting with a group of humans, they sat alone in their chamber, reviewing data. The humans had requested a partnership, a merger of sorts. There were whispers that humans were not as primitive as once believed. Some even said they had potential to unlock technologies that could change the future of the galaxy. But Kalar wasn't convinced. What could they possibly bring to the table? Kalar muttered to themselves. Their emotional volatility is their greatest weakness. Kalar had never met a human in person. All their knowledge came from studies and reports. But what they'd read didn't inspire hope. Humans were unpredictable, irrational, and consumed by emotions. They formed bonds with one another, something Kalar considered irrelevant. They were nothing like the Xylar, who viewed themselves as superior because of their unemotional, analytical nature. As Kalar paced back and forth in their room, they thought about the human ambassador, Captain Olivia Sykes, who would be arriving in a few hours. The humans had sent her to negotiate, hoping to establish a strong connection with the Xylar. Captain Sykes was known for her fiery personality and her reputation as someone who was deeply connected to her crew and her people. Kalar's mind raced with skepticism. "She'll likely try to use emotion to sway me," Kalar muttered, "but I won't fall for it." The doors to the chamber opened with a hiss, and Kalar's attention shifted immediately. Standing in the doorway was Captain Olivia Sykes. She was a woman of medium height, with short brown hair that framed her face. Her eyes were sharp, reflecting an intelligence that seemed to burn with an intensity that could rival even the Xylar's brightest minds. She wore the uniform of a human military officer, but there was something about her presence that seemed different. It wasn't just her uniform or her posture. There was an aura of strength, something that Kalar couldn't quite place. "Greetings, Ambassador Sykes," Kalar said coolly, offering a formal nod. "I trust your journey was acceptable." "More than acceptable," Olivia replied with a smile that was both confident and warm. "I'm glad we finally get the chance to meet Kalar. I've heard a lot about the Xylar." Kalar's brow furrowed slightly. "I hope what you've heard is accurate." "Oh, I'm sure it is," Olivia said, her voice friendly but with an undercurrent of something Kalar couldn't quite decipher. "I believe the partnership between our species could be beneficial for both sides. We have technologies that could help you, and you have knowledge that could benefit us." Kalar studied Olivia, trying to gauge her every word, every movement. "We are capable of handling things on our own, Captain Sykes. We do not need assistance." Olivia's smile didn't falter. "Perhaps not. But sometimes, cooperation can lead to greater things than we could achieve alone." Kalar found her words interesting. There was no hesitation, no sign of fear. Humans, despite their supposed emotional instability, had a certain persistence about them. They didn't back down easily. But Kalar wasn't swayed. "We do not value cooperation for the sake of emotional fulfillment," Kalar replied coldly. "The only value that exists in this universe is that which is practical and measurable." Olivia nodded, as if she had expected this. "I understand. And while I agree that practical value is important, I also believe that emotions have their own kind of strength. They drive us, help us grow, and connect with others in ways that logic alone cannot. Kaler's eyes narrowed. You waste your time on such notions, Captain. Emotions only cloud your judgment. Olivia's gaze remained steady. Perhaps, but they also make us human. And that's something I wouldn't trade for anything. There was a silence between them, thick with unspoken words. Kaler could feel their frustration rising. How could someone so illogical be so certain of their beliefs? How could a species so driven by emotions have survived, let alone thrived, in a galaxy full of cold, calculating beings like the Tylar? The conversation moved forward, but Kaler couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this human. Olivia was unlike any being they had encountered before. She didn't fit into the neat, logical box that Kaler had prepared for all of humanity. She wasn't afraid of Kaler's coldness. She wasn't trying to appeal to reason or force a decision based on scientific facts. She simply believed in the strength of her people and in the power of emotions. It was then that Kaler realized the human was a challenge. She was not easily dismissed. Her beliefs were not simply illogical. They were different. And that difference intrigued Kaler. Despite themselves, they'd wanted to understand what made Olivia so unwavering. As the meeting went on, Kaler found themselves studying Olivia more than listening to her words. Her face was open, expressive, revealing every emotion as it passed. There were no hidden calculations behind her gaze, no attempts to manipulate or strategize. She was genuine, and that was something Kaler didn't know how to respond to. When the meeting finally ended, Olivia stood to leave, her hand outstretched toward Kaler. "Thank you for your time, Kaler," she said, her tone sincere. Kaler stared at her hand for a moment, their mind racing. There was no reason to shake hands. It wasn't part of their culture. It was unnecessary. But something about the gesture felt important, almost like an invitation, an offer to connect. After a long moment of hesitation, Kaler extended their hand and shook Olivia's firmly. For the first time in their life, Kaler felt something they couldn't name, a curiosity, a spark of something new that wasn't just data or logic. "This gesture," Kaler began, their voice almost uncertain, "is it meaningful?" Olivia's eyes softened. "It's a simple gesture, but yes, it's meaningful. It's how we connect, how we show trust and respect." Kaler's mind was swirling. The concept of trust, of showing respect through an act as simple as shaking hands, was something they had never considered. It seemed illogical. Yet there was something in Olivia's eyes, something in her voice, that made them wonder if perhaps there was more to the universe than just cold, hard facts. As the door closed behind Olivia, Kaler stood still for a long moment, their mind racing. They had thought they understood everything there was to know about humanity, but now they weren't so sure. There was something about this human that defied all their calculations, something about her that was different. And for the first time, Kaler found themselves wondering, could the humans really be more than just emotional creatures? Could their bonds be something worth understanding? The days following the first meeting between Kaler and Olivia felt like an eternity. Kaler couldn't stop thinking about their encounter. The human was still a mystery, and no matter how hard they tried, Kaler couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than just emotions. Her unwavering confidence, her strange ability to connect without logic. It was as if her very presence disrupted the orderly systems that Kaler had spent a lifetime perfecting. But soon, the conversation and intrigue faded into the background. The real reason the Kaler and humans were meeting had arrived, an urgent crisis that required the combined efforts of both species. The galaxy was in danger, and no amount of logical analysis could change that. It was time for action, and that meant Kaler and Olivia would have to work together, whether they liked it or not. The Tylar had discovered a massive asteroid on a collision course with a highly populated human colony. The asteroid was too large and too fast to be diverted by conventional means. The humans' technology was advanced, but their methods relied heavily on physical tools and mechanisms. The Xylar, on the other hand, excelled in manipulating energy fields, gravity, and quantum mechanics. If they could combine their expertise, the asteroid might be stopped in time. This wasn't an ordinary situation. The asteroid wasn't just a giant rock hurtling toward the colony. It was surrounded by a mysterious energy field, one that the Xylar couldn't analyze completely with their traditional methods. It seemed to bend the very laws of physics in ways that even they couldn't explain. But the humans, with their innovative spirit, had come up with a bold idea. They would send a human team into the heart of the energy field to gather data, while Keller and the Xylar would provide technical support from the outside. It was a plan that had never been attempted before. The Xylar, with their cold efficiency, had never allowed any of their kind to take such a dangerous risk. But the situation was dire, and desperate times called for desperate measures. At the forefront of this mission was Captain Olivia Sykes. She was the one chosen to lead the human team. Kalar, though, was skeptical. The Xylar had their own highly trained soldiers, technicians, and scientists. Why would they need to rely on humans for something this dangerous? What makes you think your people can handle this? Kalar asked, their voice cold, as they stood beside Olivia in the command center. Your methods are too unpredictable. You do not have the precision we require. Olivia glanced at Kalar, unfazed. And your people are too rigid. Sometimes, unpredictability is the only thing that works in situations like this. We're good at thinking on our feet. Kalar's eyes narrowed. This is not a game. This is about saving an entire colony. You will do exactly as you're told. Olivia's expression softened, but there was a hint of something else in her eyes, something Kalar couldn't quite interpret. I know the stakes, Kalar, but I also know that your people can't do this alone. We've faced things like this before. Together, we have a chance. There was a long pause, and then Kalar spoke again, their voice tinged with something like frustration. I don't trust your emotions to guide us through this. I don't expect you to, Olivia replied, her voice steady. But you'll learn to trust us as we go. We all have our strengths. Kalar was silent for a moment. There was a strange feeling creeping into their thoughts, something that they didn't want to acknowledge. Was it doubt, or was it just the sense that Olivia might be right? They didn't know. All they knew was that the plan was in motion, and they had no choice but to follow through with it. The mission began within hours. Olivia, along with a small team of humans, was prepared to board a specialized shuttle that would take them directly into the heart of the asteroid's energy field. They would collect data on the anomaly while avoiding the asteroid's gravitational pull. It was a mission fraught with danger, and everyone involved knew that the chances of success were slim. Kalar, standing at the command center, watched as Olivia and her team climbed into the shuttle. The Xylar's ships were already positioned, creating a protective energy shield around the shuttle, ready to provide cover at a moment's notice. Kalar had coordinated every aspect of the plan, analyzing every possible outcome, but there was still an unsettling feeling in the air. The unknown energy field that surrounded the asteroid was unlike anything they had encountered before. Even with all of their knowledge and technology, the Xylar couldn't predict how it would behave. Olivia's voice crackled over the comms, bringing Kalar's focus back to the present. We're ready to go. Initiating the approach now. Stay in constant communication, Kalar ordered, and do not deviate from the plan. Understood. We've got it, Kalar, Olivia responded, her voice full of determination. We'll do our part. You just make sure we have the cover we need. With that, the shuttle launched, heading straight for the asteroid. Kalar watched the live feed with a sense of growing tension. There were so many variables they couldn't control, and yet they had no choice but to trust in the plan. As the shuttle approached the asteroid, the energy field seemed to shimmer and pulse, like a living entity. It was a terrifying sight, and Kalar couldn't help but feel a flicker of unease. How are they doing? Kalar asked, their voice betraying a hint of concern despite themselves. "They're fine for now," one of the Xylar technicians replied, their tone calm and precise. "But the energy field is fluctuating. We're not sure how long the shield will hold." Killer's thoughts raced. They knew that time was running out. The asteroid was moving fast, and every second counted. The human team had to get the data they needed, or it would all be for nothing. In the shuttle, Olivia and her team were experiencing the full brunt of the energy field's strange effects. It was unlike anything they had anticipated. The shuttle's instruments were picking up erratic readings, and the surrounding space seemed to warp and twist as they approached the asteroid. "We're not getting clear data," Olivia reported over the comms. "The energy field is blocking our sensors. We'll need to get closer to get anything usable." "Negative." Killer's voice came through, sharp and firm. "Do not get any closer. The risks are too great." Olivia's voice was calm but insistent. "Killer, we have to. If we don't get this data, we won't be able to stop the asteroid. We don't have the luxury of playing it safe." Killer's mind raced. They had never worked with such impulsive individuals. Human bravery, or was it recklessness? It was hard to say. But they couldn't ignore the situation. Time was running out. "Fine," Killer finally said. "But if you make one mistake, the entire mission is compromised." "Understood," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "We'll be careful." As the shuttle neared the asteroid, the energy field seemed to grow even more intense, pulsing with a strange, almost alive energy. The shuttle's systems began to flicker, and the atmosphere inside the cabin grew tense. Every crew member knew that one wrong move could be their last. But Olivia was resolute. She guided the shuttle with precision, her hand steady on the controls as they slipped closer and closer to the asteroid. Her team worked in perfect harmony, gathering data despite the chaos around them. Back at the command center, Killer watched, heart racing despite their best efforts to remain composed. The data streaming in from the shuttle was incomplete, but it was enough to give them a sense of the energy field's behavior. They could make a plan, refine the approach, and hopefully stop the asteroid before it reached the colony. Then suddenly, a warning alarm blared across the command center. "What's happening?" Killer demanded, their voice sharp. "The energy field is destabilizing," the technician said. "The shield around the shuttle is starting to break down. We can't hold it much longer." Killer's mind went into overdrive. The human team was in danger. They had to act fast. This was no longer just about the mission. It was about saving lives. "Prepare the backup plan," Killer ordered, "and be ready to pull them out immediately." The shuttle had been in the energy field for what seemed like hours. Olivia's team was doing everything they could to collect the necessary data, but the field was playing tricks on their instruments. It felt like the universe itself was rejecting them. The air inside the shuttle was thick with tension, and every crew member knew that they were walking a razor's edge. One wrong move, one small error, and everything could collapse. "Olivia, we're running out of time." Killer's voice crackled through the comms. "The shield is weakening. You need to retrieve the data and leave now." But Olivia didn't flinch. She had faced dangerous situations before, but this was different. This was the kind of risk that could end everything: her life, her crew's life, and possibly the entire colony. She looked at her team, their eyes reflecting the same determination that burned within her. "I know, Killer," Olivia replied, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of urgency. "But we need more time. We can't leave without the full picture. If we do, we won't be able to stop the asteroid." "We've already discussed this," Killer shot back, their tone sharp. "You have no more time." But something in Olivia's voice caught Killer off guard. There was a confidence there, a kind of quiet certainty that wasn't just driven by impulse. It was the kind of certainty that came from years of experience. Keller's mind, usually so focused on logic and calculation, began to feel a faint crack in the walls they had built around themselves. The human's determination was contagious. Kellar felt their frustration rise. They couldn't afford to be distracted, not now. But something strange happened, something Kellar couldn't explain. The sensation came from within them. A flicker, a pull, like a thread connecting them to Olivia in a way they had never experienced before. For a brief moment, Kellar wasn't thinking about the mission or the asteroid. Instead, they were simply aware of Olivia. It was like the human's presence had wormed its way under Kellar's skin, settling into their thoughts, blending with their mind. It wasn't just the calm, logical responses Kellar was used to. This felt deeper. It felt human. Olivia's calm confidence had triggered something in Kellar, a quiet, unsettling curiosity. For the first time, Kellar wasn't calculating every possibility. They were considering something else, something new. Was it possible that Olivia had already begun to change them? That somehow, the human was reaching them in ways they didn't even fully understand. "What are you thinking?" Olivia's voice broke through Kellar's thoughts, sharp but not unkind. "Talk to me, Kellar. What's going on?" Kellar's fingers hovered over the control panel. They were torn between the pressure of the mission and the inexplicable feeling inside them. "You are persistent," Kellar said carefully, their voice softer than usual. "But that will not save us. We need the full data, but you must leave now." There was a pause on the other end of the comms, and Kellar could almost feel Olivia's eyes on them, even though she wasn't physically present. "We can't leave yet. You said we needed to know everything. And I'm telling you, we're so close to understanding this field. I need a little more time, Kellar." Kellar took a deep breath, their minds struggling to maintain control. "You are not thinking logically. If we delay further, we risk more than just the mission." "I know," Olivia said. "But sometimes, Kellar, you have to trust in something more than logic. Sometimes you have to trust in each other." Those words, "trust in each other," sent a shiver down Kellar's spine. What did that even mean? The concept of trust was foreign to Kellar. They had never needed trust. That Kellar had always relied on logic and efficiency, not human-like connections. Yet, for some reason, those words had struck a chord with Kellar. As Kellar processed this new sensation, they felt the connection between them and Olivia grow stronger. It was subtle at first, like a faint whisper in the back of their mind. But as the seconds ticked by, it became undeniable. It wasn't just Olivia's voice in their ears. It was something more. It was like they could feel her presence inside their thoughts, urging them to listen, to understand. At that moment, Kellar realized something that shocked them. They didn't just hear Olivia. They felt her. Every word, every command, every moment of hesitation. Kellar was experiencing it all. It was as if Olivia's thoughts were becoming intertwined with their own. The cold, calculating walls that Kellar had built for so long started to crumble, replaced by a warmth they didn't understand. Kellar shook their head, trying to push the feelings aside. This was illogical. This wasn't supposed to happen. They couldn't afford to become distracted by emotions or feelings of connection. But it was no use. The more Kellar tried to suppress the bond, the stronger it became. It was as if their minds were reaching out to each other, despite the barriers they had set. In the shuttle, Olivia was doing her best to maintain control as the energy field pulsed around them. The data was still incomplete, but she could feel it. She was on the brink of understanding something important, something that could save them all. But her mind was no longer focused only on the mission. Kellar's presence was with her, pushing and pulling at her thoughts. She didn't know how it was happening, but she knew it was real. "Kellar," Olivia said softly, her voice full of uncertainty for the first time. "I can feel you. It's like you're here with me, inside my head. Are you feeling this too?" The question hung in the air like a weight, and Kellar's heart skipped a beat. They couldn't answer right away. They didn't even know what to say. The connection was undeniable, but it didn't make sense. It was as though Olivia's presence had seeped into Kellar's very being, disrupting their thoughts, challenging everything they knew about the universe. I don't know what this is, Keller finally said, their voice barely a whisper. But I can feel you too. In my mind. Inside me. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The connection between them was no longer just a physical link. It was something deeper, more profound. Keller wasn't sure what to make of it, but they couldn't deny its reality. And neither could Olivia. For a long moment, there was only silence between them. It was as if the universe had paused, waiting for both of them to come to terms with what was happening. Keller's mind raced with confusion and wonder. Was this how humans experienced connections? Was this what they meant by trust? Could it be that the very thing Keller had always considered a weakness, their own emotional detachment, was the very thing preventing them from understanding this new bond? In the shuttle, Olivia closed her eyes for a moment, trying to make sense of the strange feeling that had taken over her. She had felt connected to Keller before, but never like this. It was like they were two halves of the same whole, drawn together by something that neither of them had anticipated. She wasn't sure what this bond meant, but she knew it was important. She knew that whatever this was, it was changing them both. "We can do this, Keller," Olivia said quietly, her voice full of determination. "I don't know how, but I know we can." Keller felt something stir inside them, something that wasn't just logic or calculation. It was something else, something they didn't have a name for. But for the first time, Keller didn't care about the words. They only cared about the connection, the bond. Together, they would face the unknown. Back at the command center, the Xylar technicians watched in awe as Keller's demeanor changed. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The cold, unyielding leader who had always valued reason above all else was now something different. There was a warmth to Keller's gaze, a shift in their posture. And the technicians knew that something profound had happened. The connection between Keller and Olivia was no longer just a theoretical idea. It was real, and it was growing stronger by the second. But no one, not even Keller, fully understood what this connection would mean for the future. As the days passed after the shuttle's near-death encounter in the energy field, something continued to shift within Keller. It wasn't obvious at first. After all, Keller was used to being in control, used to having everything carefully planned out, every possibility calculated. Yet the quiet pull, the strange connection they felt with Olivia, was no longer something that could be ignored. It had started small, like a whisper in the back of their mind, but with every moment spent communicating with Olivia, whether through strategy sessions, urgent updates, or shared quiet moments during breaks, Keller could feel the thread between them growing tighter, stronger. It was as though something inside them was awakening, something they hadn't even known was there. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, and Keller wasn't sure whether they were ready for what it meant. In the shuttle, Olivia's leadership had been the deciding factor in their success. The data she had gathered, despite the dangers, had proven to be invaluable. Together, the humans and Xylar had formulated a plan to stop the asteroid in its tracks, but that was not what Keller couldn't stop thinking about. It was what had happened between Olivia and them. Something unexplainable, something deeply human. They had saved the colony. The mission was a success, but the connection between them hadn't faded with the conclusion of the operation. No, it lingered like a shadow that couldn't be cast away. Now, back aboard the Xylar flagship, the crew was decompressing, trying to recover from the mission strain. Everyone was exhausted, but it was a quiet exhaustion, the kind that came from a battle won, from knowing they had achieved something great. For most of the Xylar, the mission had been just that, a task, a job well done. For Keller, it was something more. They couldn't stop thinking about Olivia. Her words had stayed with them, echoing in their thoughts. Trust in each other. The words had been so simple, yet they had shaken Keller to their core. What did it mean to trust someone? Was it just a concept humans used to comfort themselves, or was it something more, something real? The Xylar didn't trust, not the way humans did, at least. Trust, in Keller's world, was a vulnerability. It was something that could be exploited, something that could be broken. But Olivia, she had trusted them. Despite everything, despite how different they were, Olivia had trusted Kalar with her life, her crew's lives. And in doing so, she had given Kalar something they had never known, a glimpse of something far beyond logic. And Kalar felt a pull toward it, a desire to understand. It was during one of their quiet communications, when the mission was finally over and they had a moment to breathe, that Kalar decided to reach out. They had been avoiding the connection for as long as possible, too caught up in the chaos of the mission and their own swirling thoughts. But now, there was no escaping it. Olivia, Keller's voice came through the comms, more tentative than usual. Can we talk? There was a brief pause before Olivia's voice responded, calm but warm. Of course. What's on your mind? Kalar hesitated. They weren't sure how to explain what they were feeling, or if they even had the words for it. I've been thinking about what you said, Keller began slowly. About trust. About bonding. It's not something I understand. Olivia was quiet for a moment, and Kalar could almost feel her trying to grasp what they were getting at. It's okay, Kalar. I know it's hard, but I want to help you understand. Kalar's brow furrowed. But why? Why would you want to help me understand something like this? The Xylar don't need this kind of connection. We don't. Kalar stopped, suddenly unsure of how to continue. I know, Olivia said softly. I know it's hard to understand. But that's exactly why I want to help. I want you to see what bonding is, what trust really means. It's not just about feelings, Killer. It's about a deeper kind of strength. And I think you can learn something from it. The words hit Keller in a way they hadn't anticipated. A deeper kind of strength. What did that mean? To Keller, strength was about control. It was about knowing your limits, your boundaries, and using that knowledge to stay powerful and untouchable. But Olivia was talking about something else, something less defined but more potent. They didn't know how to respond, so instead, Keller simply said, Tell me. Tell you what? Olivia replied, as though she already knew the answer. Tell me about bonding, about what it really means to trust someone. Olivia's voice softened, and Keller could almost picture the thoughtful expression on her face, even though they weren't physically together. Bonding it's something that happens when you allow yourself to be vulnerable with someone. You let your guard down, not because you have to, but because you trust them enough to do so. It's not easy, but when it happens, it's powerful. It makes you stronger, not weaker. It's about knowing you have someone who's there for you, no matter what. Kilar was silent for a moment, processing her words. The concept was so foreign, but there was a part of them that couldn't help but be curious. It was as though something inside them was being drawn toward the idea. They had never considered vulnerability a strength. To Kelar, it had always been a liability. What if someone betrays your trust? Kelar asked, their voice quieter than usual. What if they take advantage of your vulnerability? Olivia's response was immediate, and it was filled with a quiet confidence. Then you learn from it. You don't let it stop you from trusting again. Not everyone is going to hurt you, Killer. You just have to find the people who won't. Kilar blinked, surprised by the ease in her words. How could she be so sure? How could she trust so easily, even after everything she had been through? Kilar had seen the way humans treated each other. Betrayal, war, pain. But Olivia was different. Olivia was teaching them that trusting didn't make you weak. It made you strong in ways Kalar couldn't quite understand, but was willing to explore. Is that what you think makes you strong? Kalar asked, still uncertain, still testing the idea. Trusting someone. Olivia chuckled softly. I think it's one of the strongest things you can do. But it's also about learning how to trust yourself. You have to believe in your own worth, Kalar, before you can trust anyone else. Kalar felt something stir inside them, a flicker of realization. They had spent their whole life relying on logic and control. They had never trusted anyone, not even themselves. But maybe that was where they had gone wrong. Maybe true strength wasn't about controlling everything. Maybe it was about letting go. For the first time, Kalar allowed themselves to entertain the thought. What if Olivia was right? What if bonding, this strange, human concept, was the key to something greater? I don't know if I can do it, Kalar said, their voice soft and unsure. But I want to try. I want to understand. Teach me, Olivia. Show me how. There was a long pause before Olivia spoke again, and when she did, her voice was filled with warmth and kindness. You're not alone in this, Kalar. We'll take it one step at a time. I'll help you understand. We'll do it together. Kalar felt something shift inside them. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic change. It wasn't an epiphany. But it was the beginning of something. A beginning of a new kind of understanding. A beginning of trust. And for the first time, Kalar didn't feel so alone. The deep hum of the Xylar flagship echoed through the ship's corridors as Kalar stood before the control panel in the command center. Their mind was still grappling with the strange, almost unfamiliar sensation of connection with Olivia. But now, there was no time to think about feelings or personal revelations. A new, terrifying problem had arisen, and it was one that threatened everything they had worked for. The asteroid, which had been the focus of their mission, was now only hours away from impacting the planet. The calculations had been precise. They had done everything they could to stop it. But something had gone wrong. The asteroid's trajectory had shifted unexpectedly, and the energy field that had previously shielded them was no longer effective. Alert! Incoming asteroid trajectory shifted. The computer's voice reported, its cold tones cutting through the tension in the room. Current course will result in impact in less than 12 hours. The crew around Kalar was frantic, their minds racing to find a solution. The technical teams were already working to calculate a new plan, but time was running out. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. And amidst the chaos, Kalar's thoughts kept returning to Olivia, the human who had taught them so much in such a short time. She wasn't physically present on the flagship, but Kalar could feel her. Her presence, like a steady anchor, was in their mind, reminding them of the lessons they had learned together. Olivia's voice crackled over the comms, breaking through the growing tension. Kalar, what's the situation? Olivia's voice was calm, even though Kalar could hear the worry beneath her words. We've encountered a problem, Kalar replied quickly. The asteroid's trajectory has shifted. We have less than 12 hours to stop it. The energy field we used before is no longer working. We need a new plan. There was a pause, and Kalar could almost sense Olivia's mind working, calculating possibilities. We can't give up. You've always been about logic and precision, Kalar, but this time, we need to think differently. Kalar blinked, taken aback. Think differently. What did that even mean? For the longest time, Kalar had relied on logic alone. They had never needed to think about emotions or instincts. But now, as Olivia's words echoed in their mind, something inside them stirred. Maybe it wasn't just logic that could solve this problem. Maybe there was more to it. Kalar's hands hovered over the console as the room fell silent, all eyes on them, waiting for direction. They could feel the weight of the crew's expectations, the pressure of the situation closing in. And yet, for the first time, Kalar didn't just feel the weight of responsibility. They felt something else too. The connection with Olivia was there, like an unspoken strength, reminding them of everything they had learned together. I know what we need to do, Kalar said finally, their voice steady, though their mind was racing. We need to combine our technologies, human and Tylar. We'll use your innovative approach, Olivia, combined with our calculations and energy fields. Together, we can adjust the trajectory and redirect the asteroid. Olivia's voice came through immediately, full of confidence. You've got it. I've been thinking about how we can combine our tech. There's a way to channel the energy you've developed into something more powerful. We can amplify it, using the asteroid's own momentum against it. Keller's eyes narrowed as they processed the plan. It was risky, but it was their best chance. We'll need to coordinate perfectly, Keller said, their voice low. Every second counts. I know, Olivia replied. But we've got this, Keller. We've been through worse, right? We've learned to trust each other. We can do this together. Keller felt a surge of something within them. Something like hope, but deeper. It was the trust they had built, the bond that had formed over time, quietly but surely. Olivia wasn't just a team member anymore. She wasn't just a human on a mission. She had become a partner, someone Keller could count on, someone who could help them see beyond the cold calculations of their race. Together, they would face this crisis. As the plan took shape, the next few hours were a blur of intense preparation and communication. Keller worked alongside the Xylar technical team, inputting the calculations and adjusting the energy field's parameters. Olivia, back on her own ship, was working with her human crew to set up their end of the process. They would need to synchronize their actions perfectly to have any hope of success. Let's do this, Olivia said, her voice steady and determined. We got a lot riding on this, but I know we can make it work. Keller nodded, even though Olivia couldn't see them. They didn't need to. The trust between them was more than enough. The hours passed in a blur of activity. Keller's mind was fully focused on the mission, but there was always a part of them that was aware of Olivia. The human's presence was like a quiet hum in the back of Keller's mind, reminding them that they weren't alone in this. No matter how difficult the task seemed, Olivia's belief in them gave Keller a new sense of strength. Finally, the time came. The asteroid was approaching fast, and there was no more room for error. Keller stood at the control panel, fingers hovering over the buttons. They took one last breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Ready, Olivia? Keller's voice was calm, though their heart was racing. We're ready, Olivia replied, her voice carrying the same quiet confidence that had carried them both through so much. Then let's begin. Together, they initiated the synchronization process. On one screen, Keller could see the Xylar energy field flicker to life, its blue hue filling the room. On the other, Olivia's team was activating the human technology designed to amplify the field's strength. The two forces began to combine, their energies merging and swirling into a bright, intense light. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent as Keller and Olivia waited, hearts pounding in unison. Would it work? Then, with a sudden, deafening hum, the energy field expanded, pulsing with raw power. The asteroid's trajectory shifted. It was working. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the asteroid began to veer off course. The deadly rock that had once seemed unstoppable was now being diverted, its path altered by the combined forces of Xylar and human technology. Keller's breath caught in their throat as they watched the data stream across the screen, confirming that the asteroid's path had been successfully altered. It was no longer a threat. The crisis was over. We did it, Keller whispered, their voice filled with awe. Together, Olivia's voice came through, full of pride and relief. We did it together, Keller. The room erupted into cheers. The crew members around Keller were shouting in celebration, but Keller barely noticed. They were lost in the moment, in the overwhelming sense of accomplishment and relief. But even more than that, Keller realized something that they had never known before. It wasn't just the calculations or the technology that had saved them. It was the connection, the trust, the bond between them. That was what had made the difference. As the celebration continued around them, Keller stood in quiet reflection. They had faced the crisis with Olivia, and together they had overcome it. For the first time, Keller understood what it meant to be part of something greater than themselves. They had learned the true strength of human bonding, and in doing so, they had found a strength in themselves that they hadn't known existed. And in that moment, Keller realized that they had changed. The cold, calculating being they had once been was no longer who they were. They had become something new, something stronger, something that understood the power of trust. The days following the successful mission were filled with celebration. The crew of the Xylar flagship was in high spirits, and even the usually reserved Kalar couldn't help but join in the festivities. The asteroid that had threatened to destroy everything was now a distant memory, a victory earned through teamwork, trust, and a bond that transcended species. Kalar had never experienced anything like it before. The exhilaration of victory, yes, but more than that, there was a new understanding within them. They had always believed that the key to survival was control over every situation, every outcome. But now, after everything that had happened, Keller knew that there was more to life than just control. There was strength in vulnerability. There was power in connection. It was a strange feeling for Keller. The Xylar were a race of beings built on logic, precision, and efficiency. They did not indulge in what they considered emotions or weaknesses, but in the days after the crisis, Keller found themselves questioning everything they had been taught, everything they had ever known. Could it be that humans, with their seemingly illogical and unpredictable ways, had something that Xylar didn't? Everything is different now, isn't it? Olivia's voice came through the comms one evening, as the celebrations died down. Keller had been alone in the command center, staring out at the stars, reflecting on what had transpired. Keller didn't need to answer immediately. Olivia's question was more than just a casual remark. It was a statement, an acknowledgement of the change they had both gone through. There was a pause, as if they were both letting the weight of the moment sink in. "Yes," Keller finally replied, their voice quiet but thoughtful. "Everything is different." There was a long silence before Olivia responded, her voice soft and understanding. "It's okay to feel that way, Keller. Change isn't always easy, especially when it's something that shifts how you've lived your whole life." Keller nodded, even though Olivia couldn't see them. It wasn't just that their understanding of trust had changed. It was deeper than that. They had learned to rely on someone else, to let go of the need for absolute control, to believe in something that couldn't be measured or calculated. They had discovered the true strength of vulnerability and the power of partnership. Keller stood on the observation deck of the flagship one evening, gazing out at the stars. It was a peaceful moment, the vastness of space stretching out before them. For the first time in a long time, Keller didn't feel lonely. They didn't feel like an outsider. They felt connected, connected to the humans, connected to Olivia, and connected to something bigger than themselves. The bond they had formed wasn't just about the mission. It was about trust. It was about understanding. It was about partnership. And as Keller looked out at the stars, they realized that they had been forever changed. The alien who had once believed that connection was a myth had learned the truth. Bonding wasn't just a human concept. It was universal. And it had the power to change everything. But even more than that, they had discovered the value of human connection. Something about the way Olivia had taught them, the way she had been patient and kind, had changed Keller in ways they couldn't yet fully comprehend. And it scared them. The alien part of them, the part that had always been logical, always been in control, was unsure how to navigate this new reality. "You've given me something, Olivia," Keller said, their voice quiet but sincere. "Something I didn't know I needed." "I'm glad I could help," Olivia replied, her tone warm. "But Keller, you did this. You let yourself change. You've allowed yourself to trust, and that's something to be proud of." The words hung in the air, like a soft reminder of how far Keller had come. It wasn't just about the victory over the asteroid anymore. It was about the journey they had taken together, the bond they had formed. They had been through so much, but it was in those quiet moments of connection that Keller had truly begun to understand what it meant to be more than just an alien, more than just a soldier. They were part of something bigger now. The days turned into weeks, and life on the flagship slowly returned to normal. The crisis had passed, but the impact of what had happened lingered in the hearts and minds of the crew. Kalar, however, found that they couldn't return to their old ways. They had changed, and there was no going back. As the days passed, Kaler found themselves spending more time reflecting on the lessons they had learned. They had once believed that logic and control were the only ways to survive. But now, they saw the world through a different lens. They had seen how trust could save lives, how partnership could be the key to overcoming even the most impossible odds. It wasn't just a lesson. They had lived it. They had trusted Olivia, and Olivia had trusted them in return. They had worked together to stop the asteroid, and in doing so, they had formed a bond that transcended their differences. For the first time, Kaler found themselves seeking out moments of connection with the crew, both Xylar and human. They hadn't been a social being before. Xylar, by nature, kept to themselves, focused solely on their tasks. But now, Kaler was finding it easier to engage with others. They still respected their need for privacy and space, but there was something inside them now that made them want to connect, to learn from others, to be part of something greater. One day, Kaler found themselves sitting with a small group of human engineers, watching as they worked on a new project. The humans, at first, had been hesitant around Kaler, unsure of how to interact with the alien. But now, they seemed more relaxed, more open. Kaler listened carefully as they discussed their work, offering suggestions where they could. It was a quiet moment, but for Kaler, it was one of the most meaningful. "I never thought I'd see the day where an alien was helping us with our tech," one of the engineers said with a grin. "But I guess anything's possible, huh?" Kaler felt a strange warmth in their chest at the comment. They weren't just an outsider anymore. They were part of the team. Later that evening, Kaler and Olivia spoke again. This time, their conversation was less about the mission and more about their personal growth. "You've come a long way," Olivia said, her voice full of pride. "I can see it. You're not the same as you were when we first met." Kaler smiled, even though Olivia couldn't see them. "I think you're right. I used to think I had everything figured out, that if I just stuck to the plan, everything would work. But now I realize that sometimes the best way to succeed is to trust others, to work together." "Exactly," Olivia replied. "And it's okay to not have all the answers. That's something I've learned from you too." Kaler felt a strange but comforting sense of peace. They had started this journey thinking they were alone, that they were the only ones who could carry the weight of the mission, the weight of the universe. But now, they knew better. They knew that they didn't have to bear the burden alone. They had Olivia, and they had the entire crew, both human and Tylar. Months passed, and the mission was officially considered a success. The asteroid was long gone, and the galaxy was safe once again. But for Kaler, the true success had come in the lessons they had learned, the growth they had experienced, and the bond they had formed with Olivia. They were no longer just a cold, calculating alien. They were part of something greater, something more powerful than they had ever imagined.